So what makes a good technical coach?
Together,
Yes.
learning cool things from each other and having fun. Like I think
Yes.
having fun, like high performing teams that I've been on, we have fun.
When we do Agile, we don't get all the requirements up front. So I guarantee you, you will be wrong. Whatever design you come up with will be incomplete. You saw another interview that we did online, and you're like, hey, I want to talk to him. And I'm really, really glad you reached out because I really, really want to talk with you, and especially about the topic that you suggested, which is Agile coaching. And specifically technical coaches. I have questions for you too. I'm sure you have questions for me. But thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So maybe just a little bit about you and what your background is.
Yeah, so I've been a software developer for 6 years now. I was lucky enough to start on an extreme programming team and was around a lot of bright people, and I learned so much, and I continue to learn all the time, and also teach others on the way. So that's why I'm interested in technical coaching. And about 2 years ago, I attended a MentorCon, and they have an open space session there. And I got to pair program with Llewellyn Falco, popular technical coach that I believe you worked with.
My hero.
And yeah, so I started diving into all his content and was like, this is what I want to do. This seems amazing. And started getting really into Salmon coaching with Emily Bache.
Hmm.
And, I read her book, and I'm now doing learning hours
Great.
I've done with two of my teams already. And one where they really wanted to learn TDD and get better at pairing. And now, the team I'm on now, we have a lot of legacy code. So we're really focusing on refactoring and how to improve the design.
Beautiful. Excellent. And I also, congratulations on being exposed to extreme programming. It's really clear that you have this sense of that there's a lot more in software development than just writing the code. And that's
Yeah.
cool.
And I'm a passionate programmer.
Yes, you are, for sure. That's
Um,
awesome.
it's great.
Yeah, it's such a great way to solidify knowledge.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that's another reason why I'm such an advocate about some of the practices like mobbing and pairing, which is because we get to learn from each other. And I think it's the solution that will save our industry. If we don't do
Yeah.
this, we're going to be lost because Bob Martin said that our industry doubles, the number of software developers double every 5 years on average, and has been for decades, which means the average level of experience on a team is about 2.5 years. That's not a lot of experience for people building enterprise software.
Yeah. And then most of the time we're too busy to mentor those junior developers. There's all these deadlines, and it's just, sprint, 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 right? We never slow down to get better.
Which is kind of strange because do other industries do that? I mean, every other industry, they built in the idea of we got to get better.
Yeah. I gave a talk last week about learning hours and deliberate practice. And I was talking about like professional athletes. They've got tons of coaches on the field, give them feedback. They practice every day. They run drills where they look at, trying to improve in one little particular skill, and they do it over and over again. They really practice because they want to get better. I also gave an example about pilots, doctors and surgeons. There's all these other industries, and they don't just learn and then stop. They continue learning their whole career.
Yes. Yes.
Why don't we do that?
Why don't we do that? I totally agree. And
Yeah.
it's essential for us because our industry is changing, I think, faster than almost any other industry.
Yep. Yeah.
And especially with AI now on the scenes, our job is going to look completely different. And I don't think it's going to take our jobs away, but we are going to have to change. And we got to understand what we're asking it to do. We got to understand what it's going to give back to us.
Yep.
So, knowing what good code is, knowing what extensibility is in software, understanding how things change and what good architecture is, those things are absolutely critical. I don't think we spent enough time previously in our industry focusing on those things. And they're going to be the only things that are essential for us, I think, in the future.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right, I got another question here for you. How do you convince engineering managers, that improving the technical skills of their team are going to be worthwhile? Because I feel like that's a big challenge, is because those are the people that as coaches we're trying to sell this idea to, right?
Yes. Yes. It's a great question. And honestly, I don't. I I don't try to sell engineering managers on this because what I've learned is either either they're aware that this is really the key issue or they're oblivious. And if they're oblivious, it's going to be really hard to convince them. And so I look for the people who are already aware, hey, we could do better. How could we do better? People, who are looking to become better. And there's a much smaller group, but
Yeah.
they're easier to convince.
And how do you go about reaching them? How do like
That has been the conundrum of my life, and not just me. Like we mentioned, some outstanding software developers previously, and I know many others who are, I mean, like the very best that I've ever met. And I know a lot of them are sitting on the bench still as technical coaches. And it's not a lack of talent, and it's not like they could completely transform these organizations. It's just that those organizations are unaware not only of them, but that there is information that would transform them, that would help them. So
Yep.
it's,
Yep. I mean, yeah, there's just a huge gap in the technical knowledge and just all this technical debt that
I
that
know.
technical coaches could really help out with, but they just, yeah, it's just not on, I've went on different job portals, and it's just not something that companies want.
But every team has a scrum master.
Yeah. Yep.
There's
Or not- or-
tons of process coaches
Yep.
to
Yep.
make the executives and the managers feel comfortable. But us developers, once again, are left in the cold. I kind of feel that way. And by the way, I'm completely frustrated with Scrum and the Scrum Alliance and all of that. I've spent 15 years trying to get them to understand that technical practices are a key element of success doing agile software development. And
Yeah.
they're just not open to it. I
And
mean,
it seems like the creators of Scrum knew that, but there was such they thought that everything was already figured out that they didn't even have to talk about it because of extreme programming, right? That
yes. And in a lot of ways, it makes sense. What Ken Schwaber might be able to put on the back of their book, Agile Software Development with Scrum, and you can go and look at the back of the book and read it. It says, "We created Scrum, an agile process, to help you enable doing extreme programming more
yeah.
effectively in your shops."
Yes.
People forgot that.
Yeah.
I swear.
Yeah.
And I do conferences, as you know, probably all around the world, and I always ask, like, how many people are doing Scrum, and everybody raises their hand. How many people are doing XP, and everyone looks around like, what's XP?
Yeah. Yeah.
From my experience, that's the high value thing. So if you're listening to this, go out and get the white book. Go out and get the book on XP, any book on XP, and you'll be 100 times better than it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
for
cool,
sure.
cool.
So, how about high performing agile teams? What do you think the key characteristics of those teams are?
I'll
Like,
share
how do
with
we?
you my ideas, and I want you to share with me your ideas too.
Yeah.
So I think consensus is so critically important. Getting everyone on the same page, and being on the same page for what is good software. I ask thousands of developers who've been through my classes. One of the first things that I ask them is, what is good software? What is technical excellence? And almost always, and we're talking about senior developers. These are, not beginners who come to my classes. These are advanced classes. And we get tongue tied. They have a hard time expressing what technical excellence or good software is. I mean, we obviously know we want to make the computer do a task, but beyond that, like extensibility, the ability to, validate code automatically, what is good virtues in software, all of those things are things that we don't think about on a daily basis, and we really should. Because, I think that's what great people in other fields do, artists and great surgeons and other people. So being on the same page with what good software is, and then some key practices that support that. One of the key things that I think every developer needs to know, and I always get like quizzical looks from people, is refactoring. Refactoring is so critical because it's the one thing that allows you to go from one design to another design, which means that you don't have to get it right the first time. And so many developers are stressed out because they think that they have to arrive at the perfect design initially. When we do Agile, we don't get all the requirements up front. So I guarantee you, you will be wrong. Whatever design you come up with will be incomplete. And so that's why Kent Beck said, do the simplest thing that could possibly work, right? Because since you're going to change it anyway, may as well do the simplest thing, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So having those kinds of practices, understanding those things, understanding changeability, those things are critically important. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely those. And I'll add on to that. You can't even arrive to those if you don't have a baseline level of psychological safety. So I think that definitely has to be there to enable almost any good, practice in Agile. And also just communication. I mean, you said about, what does good design look like? I think that's a lack of the terminology of talking about design patterns or code smells, being able to use these abstractions to communicate with each other. And I think pair programming, mob programming, those really help to share knowledge amongst the team with the domain, and also just improving together, learning together,
Yes.
learning cool things from each other, and having fun. Like I think
Yes.
having fun, like high performing teams that I've been on, we have fun.
Enjoying it is very critically important. And having a safe space. I think people misinterpret psychological safety. They think that that means no one's going to yell at you, but psychological safety is the way Google defined it in their study, is really feeling free enough to be able to express yourself. And this is oftentimes a challenge on teams because some people are more vocal than other people. And we want to make sure everybody gets a chance to express themselves, especially when we're working in a group. And I think it's ironic that like so many managers say to me, well, yeah, I want the team, I want velocity, but I also want the team to have teamwork. I want everyone to be on the same page. I want them to have the same practices. I want them to understand each other. And all of those things are benefits of pairing promiscuously and mobbing. And these are
Hmm.
things that they've told me over and over again that are really important. And yet they go, "Oh, we would never pair program because that's cutting half my resources off." And it's like, no, that's not the way to think about it. That's not true at all. And I know so many high performing, super high performing teams that mob or pair. It's not a coincidence. And I've been in the industry for over 4 decades. A lot of times, the people like me are like overly concerned with performance because we were in a world that machines were slow. That's not the concern today. The trade-off today is more your time, my time as developers, and building software that's more resilient to change.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So what do you
Right.
think this whole new AI thing is going to do for our industry?
Yeah, I mean, I've had some high school kids that are trying to choose their career path. They've been asking me that recently, and I'm not too worried about it, to be honest, because I think the crafters, the ones that are, focused on building good designs, will be able to use this as a tool to accelerate our development, and the non-crafters will be replaced. And I think what you said earlier about that, now these technical practices become even more important, and the craftsmanship and creativity of software programming becomes more important.
Yeah, I agree. I very much agree. And I also think that the demand for software is something that we have completely turned our back on. That is so high and we're so unable to fulfill it that we've ignored it. But as soon as people start to realize that they can get the software that they need from other industries in a matter of an hour instead of a year, it's going to
Mhm.
completely transform every other business on the planet. And that's
Yeah.
going to be good.
Yeah, it's going to change things a lot, but humans are very adaptable and we figure out how to ride the wave of these things.
The biggest challenge I find, I don't know about you as a coach, is pairing and mobbing, getting people to try it, just to try the experience of it. Do you find that that's challenging?
I haven't had too many experiences yet, and most of the teams they're already really interested in it and very open-minded. They're also usually consultants in my organization as well, and they're already pair programming, so we already do pair programming. All right, yeah, let's talk about design patterns. Yeah, so I often see that design patterns may like lead to over engineering. So like how do we balance using design patterns with approaching like a simple design and like keeping it simple? Like where do we draw the line?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question to ask because I see a lot of people over apply patterns. Patterns can be complex, and when you apply it to a problem where it's not the right solution, it can completely complexify and mess things up. And so I believe that when a pattern is useful for a problem, it actually is in the problem. So what I do is I try to find ways of recognizing the pattern in the problem. And that's what I teach, is how to find the pattern in the problem. And when you can see that pattern in the problem, you know it's there. You know it's elegant. You know it's the right solution and you're not over engineering. So
Okay.
that's the key. That's the key. And it takes a very different approach to thinking about patterns. And again, this came from Al Shalloway and Scott Bain, who I think are some of the most brilliant people and pioneers. Al wrote the book Design Patterns Explained. It was one of the first and really excellent books on, because Gang of Four's book, the original Design Patterns book, is phenomenal, but it's unreadable. It's hard for most of us to understand. So having another book to interpret it for the rest of us is really useful.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is definitely one area I'm lacking. And I usually, just go for simple design and letting the, kind of test guide me and
Good,
code smells guide me.
good. That's another way to do it. And oftentimes you'll arrive at a very similar solution. So
Yeah.
get
So
something, yeah, good.
sorry. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, get something to work. And once you have it working, when we're doing XP, right, we have now tests in place to lock down that behavior. So now we see the green bar and we can go and refactor the code to a design pattern, which oftentimes is more complex to do, easier to make a mistake. And if we ever make a mistake, boom, our test fails and we know we can back it out in a few seconds. So that's the approach. Do quick and dirty, like you say, do the simplest thing that could possibly work. And then once we have it working, then refactor it.
Yeah. And even then, like if we practice and know how to refactor that, we can just look at that and say, I don't think that made the design better. Let's go back.
Yes.
Like let's get rid
Yes.
of it, right? And that reversibility as
And
well.
every refactoring is reversible.
Yep.
And the other thing about refactoring is not just changing the implementation of your design, but it's doing it in a safe way, in tiny steps so that you don't get lost. Because I think a lot of developers are honestly scared to refactor. I sure was. Before I knew how to go into legacy code and not break stuff, I was making one tiny little change. I'm like, oh, this is not going to affect anything. It blew the whole system up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in the early days, I did that without a backup, and boy, did I suffer. I mean, it's
Oh wow.
weeks of all-nighters to try to get that code back into the right place. So, what makes a good technical coach as opposed to
Um,
other kinds of coaches?
yeah, I think really kind of stepping out of the way and letting the people there learn the things on their own, but we be able to guide them. Like kind of instead of leading, I think it's getting at the back of the line and kind of guiding them to the right path.
So, what I hear you saying is teaching them how to teach themselves what the
Yeah.
right things are, like where to focus their attention. Because for a lot of people, it's like, it's the whole universe. I don't know where to start. And you're
Yeah.
saying, let's focus on these high value things, and that will
Yeah.
open up more doors for them.
And think also breaking down the lessons and in the form of learning hours, they're really very small and concrete. And with some on coaching, be able to work with those developers on the real code, and then kind of see that, okay, we need a little bit more work on this area. Let's practice that, and then bring it back. And then learning is a semi-permanent change in behavior. So I think another thing about technical coach is that they need to leave the room or leave the company for, a little bit of time, and then come back and making sure that those behaviors are still intact.
Yes. That's
They
really good.
should be they shouldn't be there forever, right? They should enable the team to be high performing, and then there's no longer a need for the coach to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say that a good coach is their job is to put themselves out of business,
Yeah.
because you want to make yourself obsolete on the team.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's how you know you're really effective.
Yes. Yes. So there's a lot of coaches out there, and it seems like the agile coach industry is just like exploded. I mean, everybody I know is like, I'm an agile coach, and I'm like, okay, so what do you coach? And they're like, oh, I talk to the executives, or I talk to the managers, or I'm like, okay, and I only know a handful of technical coaches. So I feel like there's a supply issue as well as a demand issue. Do
Yes.
you see that as well?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Management winds up making bad decisions because they don't even know to ask us in a lot of times.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a strange place for the world to be in, because we're not just talking about one company. We're talking about like many organizations. I've worked with dozens and dozens of organizations. I've seen it over and over again.
Yep.
So what is the solution? Because we're talking about our industry and the challenges in our industry, but remember, the software industry drives every other industry on the planet. So when we say we are messing up, I'm saying planet Earth. I'm saying all industry is messing up, and the ones the leverage to be able to make this work, to fix the whole world, is in our hands as developers in many ways. I want us to own that. I want us to say, hey, we do have some answers. We do have some solutions, so we could be empowered to share them with the rest of the world. And I don't know what it was, but it seems like, I like to, as earlier, I was blaming Scrum and Safe, but it's really not their fault. It's really kind of a mindset that I see everywhere. Do you see it too? Like
Which mindset in particular?
this lack of awareness towards technical competence. Now, we developers are kind of different because it's our field, but like everyone else in the world, our managers and all the other support people are like, oh, don't tell me this technical thing.
I think it's kind of just become normal to have a lot of bugs around, and I think they've gotten used to that it takes a long time to deliver things. I think they're just getting used to that, and
Wow.
you get used to the fire all around. I think
Yeah.
they're just complacent, and I think there's also a problem with the developers in that I think there's like an advanced beginner kind of syndrome where they think they know everything, and I'm probably I was definitely there a few years ago where I was like, "Oh yeah, I know TDD, I know all this stuff. I'm good." And it's really our whole career. We need to keep growing. It's fast changing. There's also a lot of things that don't change and are very old, and are there's a lot of old books that are still like about design, about object oriented programming. Those
Yes.
things don't change, and
Yes.
like learning those and focusing on that foundation will help your career, help the businesses you work for, and you'll be more confident in challenging those product owners and telling them that there's a better way to do things and I know how to do it. So give me that chance and I'll make things better.
I think that the big disruptor and the huge change for all of us is going to be AI. And AI is going to succeed where Agile and DevOps has failed. So I would say that if you're an Agile coach, especially technical coaches like us, embracing AI and embracing AI in our workflow is going to open up huge opportunities, because maybe managers are not going to be like, well, I really wanted to have our team do extreme programming, but they are going to say, well, I really want to have our team stay small and be able to increase their capacity with AI. So
Hmm.
maybe that would be a good opportunity.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, this is a great conversation, David.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, takeaways?
It's a lot. Yeah, I think just continue to teach the masses about how technical excellence can, that it's the future.
What the thing that's super exciting is the people who are attracted to software development are really smart people. And they're not just smart. I mean, in my experience, they have heart too. We're well equipped to help. We're probably some of the best people to help in the world. So let's do it. And I want to support us in doing that. So I hope you'll stay tuned in to the channel because I want to make videos for you that will help you work with and empower other people. Cool. Well, thank you so much. It's been very exciting. It's a great conversation. And I hope we can continue the conversation offline.
Definitely. It's great talking to you.
Thank you.